You did not find this video by accident. If you are watching this right now, the universe itself has aligned to bring you here. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, and what you are about to discover is not a theory or philosophy. It is a psychological awakening that Jung predicted would happen at this exact moment in history. He called it the shift, and those who remain unconscious during this transition will be crushed by forces they cannot see. But you were chosen to see this before it happens. You were selected to prepare for what is coming, because Jung left a specific warning about this exact time. And that warning begins with something most people refuse to acknowledge. The God image is changing. Jung discovered that humanity does not worship gods. Humanity projects its own unconscious onto gods. And right now, the collective unconscious is going through a transformation so massive that it is tearing apart everything we thought was stable. Jung spent decades studying what happens when the psyche of an entire civilization shifts. He documented it in wars, in revolutions, in the collapse of empires, and he realized that before any external chaos manifests in the world, it first erupts inside the human mind. The God image in our collective psyche is the psychological anchor that holds societies together. It represents our deepest values, our sense of meaning, our understanding of right and wrong. Think of it as the invisible glue that binds millions of people into a coherent culture, a shared reality, a common understanding of what it means to be human. When that God image is stable, societies function, people know their roles, institutions operate smoothly, life feels predictable, manageable, safe. But when that image changes, when the anchor shifts, everything built on top of it collapses. The institutions crumble, the roles disappear, the predictability evaporates, and people are left floating in psychological space with nothing to hold on to. You feel it, don't you? That pressure in your chest, that sense that something fundamental is breaking apart. Jung said this feeling is not anxiety. It is your psyche responding to a seismic shift happening beneath the surface of consciousness, and those who cannot see it are about to be destroyed by it. Jung called this phenomenon the psychic epidemic. It happens when masses of people lose their internal anchor and become possessed by ideologies, movements, and beliefs that promise certainty in a world that feels like it is spinning out of control. He watched. It happen in Germany before World War II. He saw rational, educated people become consumed by a collective madness that no one could explain logically. Professors, doctors, scientists, ordinary families, all of them swept into a movement that promised order in chaos. They were not evil people. They were unconscious people. And that unconsciousness made them dangerous in ways they could never imagine. But Jung understood what was happening. When the God image shifts, people panic. They search desperately for something to believe in, something to give them meaning, and in that desperate state, they become vulnerable to possession. Not possession by demons or spirits, possession by unconscious psychological forces that take over their minds and make them believe they are acting with clarity and purpose, when in reality, they are being controlled by something they cannot see. The psychic epidemic spreads like a virus through the collective unconscious. One person becomes possessed, then 2, then 10, then millions. And each person who falls into possession becomes a carrier, infecting others through their absolute certainty, their unshakable conviction, their complete inability to question their own beliefs. Jung documented how this epidemic manifests. First, people lose their ability to think critically. They stop questioning the narratives they are fed. They accept information that confirms their existing beliefs and reject anything that challenges them. Second, they develop an us versus them mentality. Everyone becomes either an ally or an enemy. There is no middle ground, no nuance, no complexity. You are either with us or against us. Third, they experience what Jung called psychic inflation. They believe they are on the right side of history, fighting for truth, defending what is good. But this inflation blinds them to their own shadow, their own capacity for evil, their own unconscious motivations. This is happening right now on a scale Jung could barely imagine. Social media has accelerated the psychic epidemic beyond anything he witnessed in his lifetime. People are being possessed by ideologies at lightning speed, spreading their infection to thousands, millions of others with a single post, a single video, a single tweet. And the most terrifying part is that no one believes they are infected. Everyone thinks they are immune. Everyone believes they are the conscious ones, while everyone else has lost their minds. But consciousness does not feel like certainty. Consciousness feels like doubt, like questioning, like the willingness to see your own darkness. The psychic epidemic feels like absolute conviction, and that is how you know someone has been possessed. This is not ancient history. This is happening right now. You see it in the polarization, the rage, the absolute conviction people have that they are right and everyone else is evil. Empaths aren't broken, they're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook, in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. Jung warned that when the collective unconscious shifts, it manifests as mass psychosis. People stop thinking critically. They stop questioning their beliefs. They become possessed by archetypal forces that override their individual consciousness. And the terrifying part is that they do not even know it is happening. They believe they are awake, aware, informed, but they are sleepwalking through a psychological apocalypse. And Jung knew this was coming. He documented it in his work on the aeons. In his book Ion, Jung explained that human consciousness does not evolve in a straight line. It moves in cycles called aeons. Each aeon lasts approximately 2,000 years, and when one aeon ends and another begins, humanity goes through a psychological death and rebirth. We are right now in the transition from the Age of Pisces to the Age of Aquarius. And before you dismiss this as astrological nonsense, understand what Jung actually meant. The ions are not about stars and planets. They are about the dominant psychological archetypes that structure human consciousness. The Age of Pisces was defined by duality, by the split between good and evil, light and darkness, spirit and matter. It was the age of organized religion, of hierarchies, of external authorities telling people what to believe. For 2,000 years, this structure held civilization together. People knew their place, knew their role, knew what to believe. The external authority provided psychological safety. It gave meaning, purpose, direction. But that age is ending. And the Age of Aquarius brings something completely different. It brings the dissolution of those structures, the collapse of external authority, the demand for individual consciousness. The transition between aeons is not a gentle process. Jung compared it to a psychological earthquake that shatters the foundations of everything humanity has built. The old God image dies, and with it dies the entire psychological structure that gave people meaning. Every institution, every belief system, every sense of certainty that was built on the old foundation begins to crumble. And during this crumbling, people experience what feels like the end of the world. Because psychologically, it is the end of their world. The world they understood, the reality they trusted, the meaning they relied upon. All of it is being destroyed. And the new world has not yet been born. This is the transition period, the death of the old and the birth of the new. And Jung knew this period would be filled with chaos, confusion, suffering, and madness. Because humanity is caught between two worlds, belonging fully to neither, trying desperately to cling to what is dying while terrified of what is being born. Jung knew this transition would be catastrophic for most people, because when you take away the structures that have held civilization together for 2,000 years, people do not become free. They become terrified. They grasp for anything that feels solid. They project their need for authority onto politicians, influencers, movements, ideologies. They become more rigid, more extreme, more convinced that they have found the truth. But what they have actually found is a psychological defense against the terror of losing their anchor. The louder they shout their beliefs, the more desperately they are trying to convince themselves that they still have ground beneath their feet. But the ground is gone. The old aeon is dead, and no amount of clinging to its corpse will bring it back to life. Jung called this the shadow of the shift, and it is the most dangerous part of what is happening right now. The shadow of the shift is the reason everything feels so polarized, so divided, so intense. When the collective unconscious shifts, all the darkness that has been hidden beneath the surface erupts into consciousness. Every repressed fear, every denied impulse, every unacknowledged evil comes flooding up. And people who are not prepared for this become overwhelmed. They cannot handle seeing the darkness within themselves, so they project it onto others. They see evil everywhere except in their own hearts. They become convinced that the problem is out there, in other people, in other groups, in other ideologies. They point fingers, they rage, they attack, but what they are really doing is running from their own shadow, and the more they run, the stronger their shadow becomes, until eventually they become the very thing they claim to hate. This is the paradox Jung warned about. The person who fights most viciously against evil is often the person most possessed by their own unconscious darkness. They do not see this. They cannot see this, because acknowledging it would shatter their entire sense of identity. So instead, they project their shadow onto enemies, onto groups they can hate without guilt, onto targets they can attack while believing they are righteous. The progressive who becomes as intolerant as any fundamentalist, the conservative who becomes as authoritarian as any dictator, the activist who becomes as violent as any oppressor, all of them possessed by the very darkness they claim to oppose, all of them acting out their unconscious shadow while convinced they are conscious, awake, fighting for good. This is what happens during the shift when people refuse to integrate their own darkness. Jung documented this pattern over and over again in his clinical work. He watched patients who prided themselves on being good, moral, righteous people suddenly explode into the exact behaviors they condemned in others. The pacifist who becomes violently aggressive, the champion of tolerance who becomes viciously judgmental, the person who preaches love who becomes consumed by hatred. This is not hypocrisy. This is what happens when the shadow takes over. And during the shift, the shadow is no longer just a personal problem. It becomes a collective force. Entire societies become possessed by their collective shadow, and they act out unconsciously on a massive scale. Wars, genocides, moral panics, social collapse. All of it happens because people refuse to integrate the darkness within themselves. They refuse to see that the enemy is not out there. The enemy is within. And until they face that truth, they will continue to create the very chaos they claim to oppose. You feel this pressure, don't you? That sense that you are seeing something most people refuse to acknowledge. That is because you are. Jung believed that during the shift, certain individuals would become conscious before the collective. He called them the chosen ones, not chosen by fate or destiny or gods, chosen by their own psychological development. These are the people who have done the inner work, who have faced their own shadows, who have integrated their darkness consciously instead of projecting it onto others. And Jung said these individuals would feel an unbearable pressure during the shift, because they would be standing between two worlds. They would see the old structures collapsing, but they would also sense the new consciousness trying to emerge, and they would feel utterly alone, because most people are still clinging to the old world, still projecting their shadows, still possessed by forces they cannot see. But the conscious ones, they can see it all. They see the collective madness. They see the projections. They see the possession. They see the old world dying and the new world struggling to be born. And that clarity is a burden. It is exhausting. It is isolating. Because when you try to share what you see, people look at you like you have lost your mind. They accuse you of being negative, paranoid, cynical, crazy. They tell you to stop overthinking, to relax, to just go with the flow. But you cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot unknow what you know. And so you carry this weight alone, wondering if maybe you really are the crazy one. This is why finding this video is not an accident. You are meant to see this because you are one of the conscious ones. You have felt the pressure. You have sensed that something massive is shifting beneath the surface of reality. You have tried to explain it to others, and they have looked at you like you are crazy. But you are not crazy. You are awake. And Jung left a map for people like you. He called it the process of individuation, and it is the only way to survive the shift without being destroyed by it. Individuation is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. It is the process of integrating all the parts of yourself that you have denied, repressed, or projected onto others. It is about facing your shadow consciously instead of letting it control you unconsciously. Jung said that individuation requires brutal honesty with yourself. It requires you to look at the parts of yourself you have spent your entire life hiding from. The cruelty, the selfishness, the pettiness, the rage, the jealousy, the greed. All the qualities you condemn in others exist within you. And until you acknowledge them, until you integrate them, they will continue to control you from the unconscious. This is the work that separates the conscious from the unconscious during the shift. And during the shift, individuation is not optional. It is survival. Because if you do not integrate your shadow, the collective shadow will consume you. You will become possessed like everyone else. You will lose your individual consciousness and become part of the mass psychosis. But if you choose individuation, if you commit to becoming conscious, no matter how painful it is, you become something Jung called the stable anchor. You become the person who can hold consciousness in a sea of chaos. And that is your role during the shift. The shift is not something you can stop. It is not something you can control. It is a natural process of psychological evolution, and it is going to happen whether anyone is ready for it or not. The only choice you have is how you respond to it. Will you remain unconscious and be swept away by forces you cannot see? Or will you become conscious and serve as an anchor for those around you? Jung believed that the future of humanity depends on individuals who can hold consciousness during times of collective madness. These are the people who do not panic when the world seems to be falling apart. These are the people who can see clearly when everyone else is blinded by fear. These are the people who can integrate their shadows instead of projecting them onto enemies. And these are the people who will guide humanity through the shift and into the new aeon. But here is the hard truth. Individuation is not easy. It is the most difficult psychological work you will ever do, because it requires you to face everything you have been running from. It requires you to acknowledge the darkness within yourself, to see your own capacity for cruelty, selfishness, and evil. It requires you to stop blaming others and take full responsibility for your own unconscious. It requires you to sit with uncomfortable truths about who you are beneath the mask. Most people will never do this work. They will choose the comfort of projection, over the pain of self-awareness. They will choose the safety of collective possession over the terror of individual consciousness. But you are not most people. You were chosen to see this video because your psyche is ready for the truth. And the truth is this: you are not going crazy. You are waking up. The world around you is going crazy. The collective is going insane. But you are becoming conscious. And consciousness always feels like madness at first. Because consciousness means seeing what others refuse to see. It means feeling what others refuse to feel. It means knowing that the structures everyone else trusts are built on unconscious illusions. Jung said that the conscious individual always feels like an outsider, always feels misunderstood, always feels the weight of seeing too much, the weight of knowing too much, while everyone else seems to glide through life in blissful ignorance. But that weight is not a punishment, it is a responsibility. Because you are being called to hold consciousness for those who cannot yet hold it for themselves. You are being called to remain stable while everything around you destabilizes. You are being called to see clearly while everyone else is blinded by projections and possessed by shadows. This is the moment Jung predicted. This is the exact time in history when the God image shifts and humanity either evolves or collapses. And you were chosen to be conscious during this transition. Not because you are special, not because you are better than anyone else, but because your psyche has developed to the point where you can see what is happening. And now you have a choice. You can ignore what you see. You can pretend everything is fine. You can go back to sleep and let the shift crush you like everyone else. Or you can accept your role. You can commit to individuation. You can become the stable anchor in a chaotic sea. You can hold consciousness for those who are still unconscious. And you can help guide humanity through the most dangerous psychological transition in 2,000 years. Jung left this warning for you. The shift is here. The God image is changing. The collective unconscious is erupting. And most people will be destroyed by forces they cannot see. But you were chosen to see this before it happens. You were given the map. You were shown the path. Now the only question is, will you walk it? Will you commit to becoming conscious no matter how painful it is? Will you integrate your shadow and become whole? Will you serve as an anchor for those who are still drowning in unconsciousness? Because that is your purpose during the shift. That is why the universe brought you here. That is why you are watching this video right now. You are not going crazy. You are waking up, and the world needs you awake. It needs you conscious. It needs you integrated, because the shift is not going to wait for anyone. It is happening now, and those who are prepared will survive. Those who are conscious will thrive, and those who have done the work of individuation will become the guides for the new aeon. Jung knew this. He predicted this. He left the map for you, and now it is your responsibility to follow it. The universe chose you to see this before the shift. Now it is time to prepare. Now it is time to integrate. Now it is time to become the conscious individual Jung knew humanity would need. If you are ready for the shift, comment "I am ready." Because this is not just a video. This is a call to consciousness. This is an invitation to individuation. This is your moment to step into the role you were meant to play. The old world is collapsing. The new world is being born. And you are standing at the threshold. Jung gave you the map. The universe brought you here. Now the only question is, will you answer the call? Will you commit to becoming conscious? Will you serve as the anchor humanity needs during the most dangerous psychological transition in history? The choice is yours. But know this: you were chosen for a reason. You were brought here for a purpose. And that purpose is to wake up, integrate your shadow, and hold consciousness for a world that is drowning in unconsciousness. You are not going crazy. You are waking up, and the universe is depending on you to stay awake. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.